Hello, and welcome to our training video on Expert Broker, your comprehensive mortgage origination platform. Whether you're a seasoned professional or new to the industry, Expert Broker is designed to streamline your workflow, enhance your productivity, and provide you with the tools you need to succeed. In this video, we'll guide you through the key features and functionalities of Expert Broker, ensuring you have the knowledge and confidence to navigate the platform with ease. From initial client engagement to the final loan approval, we'll cover every step of the mortgage origination process. Let's get started and explore how Expert Broker can transform your mortgage origination experience. Firstly, let's start with the Filogix Expert Community page. This is our home page. For bilingual users, this is the page where you'll be able to set the application language to either English or French. On this page, you'll also see the latest news in the mortgage broker community. We'll post things such as release notes or collaborations with other providers. At the very bottom of the page, you can find our support contact information. You can reach our technical support team via email or via the noted phone number between the hours of 9 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday to Friday. But you can email us at any time and we'll get to the email as soon as possible. Now to get started, simply select Launch Filogix Expert, which will bring you to this page. If it's your first time logging in, you will be required to reset your password by selecting the Reset Password option, entering your account details such as your firm code login ID, and then one piece of contact information, whether that be your email address, cell phone number, or work phone. Once completed, press Submit. If at any point in this steps you should require support, please contact their support team. Once you've created your password, you'll get back on this page and you'll log in. Simply enter your 4-character firm code, your login ID, followed by your password. And voila, we're logged in. Once logged into Expert, you'll be presented with a few pieces of information at the top of your screen. At the top, you'll have your username, followed by your user type, so that could be broker, agent, administrator, associate, assistant, to name a few. Underneath that, you'll have your expert profile number. So this may be useful when registering with certain lenders or linking a third-party application to the platform. Below, you'll have two pieces of security information, so the last time you signed on successfully and the last time you failed signing in. If those times and dates look inaccurate to you, feel free to contact us. To the right, you'll be presented with a session timer. The timer starts at 30 minutes and counts down. For every action performed that causes Expert to reload the page, you'll be presented with another 30 minutes. If you plan to be away for longer than the allotted time, ensure that you are signing off to prevent issues signing back in. Before we get to the menu options, underneath the menu bar, you'll see that we have a ticker going. The information ticker will contain good to know information for your everyday use. From the home menu, you have the option to create a new application, which is pretty straightforward. Underneath that, you'll have your option to perform a quick search. The quick search will allow you to search for any active deals where you know at least the application number or last name of the applicant. For a more broadened search, you can go to the advanced search. This will allow you to not only search for the applicant and deal number, but you'll be able to additionally search for subject property addresses, deals by specific agents, and you'll be able to also filter through by deal by date type. Back in home, underneath that you have View Task List, which will allow you to view any tasks that have been assigned to you. And we'll get back to this at the end of this session. To the right, we have My Workspace, which will contain up to the last 200 recent applications you've accessed. To the right, we have Quick Links. In the Quick Links, you'll be presented with our support contact phone number. Underneath that, you have a page to Financial Canada, which we were on earlier. You'll have a link to the Expert Pro overview. So if you are interested in Expert Pro, which is a sister application for Filogix Expert, feel free to contact their sales team. There's a link for training resources, which will lead you to our YouTube page, along with FinTrack webinar, which will lead you to our FinTrack related videos. Reverting back to the menu at the top, we'll go into Workspace. So as I mentioned before, Workspace will contain up to the last 200 deals that you have accessed and will be displayed as long as you still have access to the deal and as long as a mortgage is present on the application. As you see, once the page is loaded, you'll see up to the last 200 deals you've accessed, and you'll see some pertinent information about those deals. Firstly, you'll have the application number to the left, which you can easily access by clicking the blue hyperlink of the deal number. You'll have your applicants, and you'll have the ability as well to filter through those applicants. So if I want to look for a deal I've created in the past for Elisa, I can type that in and it'll give me the results. I can do the same thing for agent if there are multiple agents in your list. I can also filter through subject property addresses, and along with that, I'll get some additional information about the requested mortgage. So you could see the deal purpose was a refinance or is a refinance for some of these. The mortgage type, the application type, if it's high ratio or conventional, the current deal status, the mortgage status, along with more mortgage details. You also have the ability to see the last lender that handled the application. So if I want to look at deals that were handled by ATB, I have the ability to do that quite quickly. Further along, you'll see more details about the requested mortgage on the application, the closing date, and the last time the deal was accessed. To get out of this section, you can click on any other menu option. From here, we'll go directly into reports. Under reports, you'll be presented with a few reports. So first, we'll have the application summary report, which will give you a basic summary of the deals in the Expert platform. Underneath that, you have the lender transaction report, which will give you a listing of deals with submission statuses based on lenders. Underneath that, we have the commissions report, which will give you a cash flow report of the deals where commissions information have been entered. We then have the renewal tracking report, which will give you a list of deals that are maturing between the selected period of time, which is then followed by the firm statistics report, which will give you stats on the type of deals at the firm, such as the number of deals that are for residential mortgages, the number that are high ratio, how many first-time home buyer deals exist. So things like that will be presented. Lastly, we have the risk level report, which is a newly introduced report which will provide you with a list of deals where the risk level for any applicant is set to medium or high. In the tools menu, you have access to your calculators amongst other things. Under calculators, you will have access to things like maximum mortgage calculator, which I'll go through. From here, you can enter the details of your applicant to get an estimated value for the maximum mortgage and payment based on the applicant's income and debts. So let's enter some mock information here. And I can enter which applicant I'm preparing this for. And pressing calculate will return the estimated maximum mortgage that the applicant may qualify for. Pressing preview will get you a generated form that you can then present to the applicant. From here, we'll go into the options screen. Under options, you'll have a few things presented to you. We have change password, which will allow you to change your password as long as you know your password. To the right of that, we have contact information. The firm profile will dictate which fields you have access to editing. At the top of the screen, you will have your usual login. So if you ever forget what your login ID is. Once contacting our support team, you can find that in the option screen. Everyone will have access to changing a few fields here, such as the password reset email and the notifications email fields. For the password reset email, this is the email you will use whenever requesting a password reset email. This is additionally the email that we will use to communicate with you. Below, we have the notifications email. The notifications email is sent to the lender whenever submitting an application. It is the email that the lender will be using to communicate with you. You do have the ability to add multiple email addresses as long as they are separated with a semicolon. Next, I'll go to address selection. Once again, this is only available if your firm has it enabled. This will give you the ability to set which address appears on select forms. So for the first group of forms, you can either select whether the firm or the agent or user address appears on those forms, which will be found in the tool screen. Below, we have the forms that you'll find in an application. So once again, you have the ability to dictate whether the firm or user address or agent on deal address will appear on these forms when they are printed. Lastly, we have the mortgage license information screen. The mortgage license information screen will give you the ability to edit licensing information for yourself. For example, if you're an Ontario agent, if you completed your certification for level 2, you have the ability to access the screen and set the proper level. Back in the menu, we have the Expert Help. The Expert Help is the guide to all things expert. You'll have the ability to find walkthroughs along with step-by-step and screenshots of any feature you're attempting to complete in the application. I would highly recommend its use for any user on the platform. From here, we'll go back to Home, and we'll start our new application. From here, we'll go back to Home, and we will go back to Home and start a new application. Before we continue, I'll revert your eyes to the left of the screen. Now that we've lost our Home menu, we now have our condensed menu. In the condensed menu, you'll still have your quick search along with your advanced search. We'll have Workspace, your task list, another option to create a new application. And the one thing that will only be presented here is recent applications. Now this will show you the last 10 deals you've accessed, and the latest access deal will replace the oldest accessed. When it comes to application entry, you have a couple application types, so you can either create an approval or pre-approval application. The main differences between a pre-approval and approval and expert is when you are entering the pre-approval, you will not be forced to enter a subject property. In application purpose, you have a few application purposes available to you. You can be creating a purchase application or a refinance type deal or other. For the purpose of this training, we will select refinance. You also have the ability to create the deal under any other agent in the firm. And down below, you have the ability to assign a referral source to the application before you start. So if you do get deals referred to you often, if you want to keep track of the referrals, you have the ability to add referrals within the Expert platform. And once the referral is then added, you can assign them to the deal as you are creating the deal. Okay, so for instance, if I know I have a few created, I can press search. It's going to provide me with my list of referrals. And let's say this was referred to me by Parker Associates. Okay, and this may save me a step later on. So I'll go ahead and I'll press continue. And as noted, it will then assign me an application number. So at the top, you have that application number. So it'll be the firm code as a prefix followed by the sequential deal number. To the right of that, you'll have your deal information box, which will contain the deal and mortgage ratios, along with the loan to value of the application, the net worth of your applicants, and up to 4 of the applicant's credit scores. To the right, we have our action buttons. So we have validate. So validate will allow expert to check for any missing information. Save, pretty straightforward, will save any changes made to the application. Although expert will save automatically anytime the page reloads, anytime you close, validate, or sign off. And lastly, we have the close option, which will allow you to close this deal from view in case any other agent would want to access the deal. The expert application is split into 2 pages. We have the applicant details on page 1, and on page 2, we have our subject property details along with mortgage particulars such as the down payment, the information, and the requested mortgage. There are multiple ways to access these pages. If you look on the left-hand navigation bar, you can click on subject property to access page 2, and to go back to page 1, you can simply press details under the applicant in question. When it comes to applicant entries, expert deems an applicant pair as a spousal pair, and that spousal pair would be applicant 1 and 2. If you are dealing with more than one applicant where they are not spousal to each other, you'll need to enter that additional applicant in another applicant pair, which we'll get to later on in this training session. For now, I'm doing a deal for a single applicant. In this case, I would need to remove applicant 2. There are 2 ways to remove applicant 2. You can either remove the check mark beside applicant 2 or click on the red X. To note, if you are deleting an applicant that previously existed on an application where you have requested a credit bureau, you will lose a credit bureau for the applicant. A deleted applicant cannot be retrieved. Let's begin entering our applicant details. I will start with the basic information for the purposes of pulling a credit bureau. So it would be the applicant's first name and their last name, along with their date of birth, and their current address. When it comes to address entry in Expert, we have the address lookup. In some sections, you'll see it's powered by Canada Post, and in others by Google Maps. All you have to do is start typing in the address, make the accurate selection, and there you go. I will enter time of residence and status. Whenever dealing with applications where the applicant does not own and you have the ability to enter rent income amount, I will advise that this field is visual. If the applicant is to be renting or continue to be renting after the transaction, you may want to enter that as a liability. All right, so we'll go pull a credit bureau for Liz. So on the left-hand side, select the credit bureau screen. And from here, we'll go ahead and enter the details required to pull a bureau. So that would be the date we received the authorization to pull the bureau, the authorization method. So let's say it was signed consent. And then our bureau selections. So we will pull a single credit bureau. We'll ensure we copy the liabilities from this bureau. So this will copy any active liabilities from the credit bureau apart from the mortgage. Any mortgages will have to be entered manually. And we'll then select our provider. So we have the 2 providers available in Canada, Equifax or TransUnion. If these fields are grayed out, this may mean that you do not have a provider entered or member codes entered in your profile, you may want to speak to your broker about that. So we'll go ahead and we'll select Equifax and we'll press request. If the request button is grayed out, this may mean you do not have the access rights to pull bureau. Okay, so we will get a prompt to ensure that the bureau or data that is being requested is not shared with any party that is not authorized to receive it. So we'll press OK. And we have our successful credit bureau. On the right, you have our preview options, so there are two of them. So I'll press the first one here. This will give us a text-based credit bureau. And then the second one will give us a PDF version of the credit bureau, which is similar to a bureau you would see if you're ordering one from the Equifax website. Although this bureau came back successful, I do have an error on it, stating based on the information supplied, we are unable to locate in items of public record or trade on this consumer. If you were to get a bureau status that does say error, the preview would typically tell you what the error is. If you run into an error that is hard to decipher, pressing the green question mark here will give you the expert help. Run into the credit bureau screen, and then on the left we have Equifax error codes. This tool will assist you in deciphering the Equifax error code that is being returned on the bureau. For instance, if you were to receive E005, you would see that it is invalid service report code specified, and the directive is to verify the applicant's first name, their last name, date of birth, and their address. For other errors, such as E0016, ensure that you contact Equifax for assistance. Underneath, we have the copy liabilities option. This will allow you to copy the liabilities once again to your expert application. Additionally, on the credit bureau screen, we have partnered with Equifax to allow you to complete your Know Your Customer AML Assist with PEP, so politically exposed persons check. In order to complete a check, what you would need to do is select Equifax, select the check you're looking to perform, so we have AML Assist with PEP, and select Request. I will display what results would look like. And underneath in the additional reports request history, you would then have a history of that request. To the right of that, we have PEPs in sanctions only. The reason for that is because you do have other means to complete the client validation, apart from using the AML Assist. If for some reason you are unable to complete the client validation through Equifax, we do have additional partnerships under identification with Verifast and Fastkey to complete the same. Now, these are external links and will require registration through those parties in order to use their tools. For more information, feel free to click on the links and follow the steps. As obligated by FinTrack, risk level assessment is required for every applicant on the deal. For instance, if you were to select high risk, you would then get a pop-up letting you know that the applicant has been flagged as suspicious high risk, and to ensure that that information is passed on to a compliance officer so that they can be reviewed and monitored. I will press low risk in this case. Let's continue down to employment. Okay, when it comes to employment, we have an employer lookup. This is powered by Google Maps and will allow us to fill in an employer name, and simply fill it in with the information from Google Maps. If you're dealing with an applicant that is working out of country, like Canada, like United States, You can enter in United States in here and do a similar search. And this will give you American companies or employers. And this will give you American employers. If you're dealing with any addresses outside of the US, including entering applicant addresses for non-residents, using Canada as a country would be the best option, and then entering the address to the best of your abilities. All right, so I'll set my status to full-time, and I'll enter in the details about the job. All right, so we do get questions about occupation. So when it comes to either a retired person or student, as you are mandated to enter at least 3 years of employment history in expert in order to submit to a lender. So when dealing with a retired person, we do have an option for retired. So you'd select retired here, other as the industry sector, and then enter in the income that you're earning as a retired person. When it comes to the address and employer name, when it comes to the employer name, you can enter in retired, and then the address, their home address. Okay, so I'll continue with this one. And I'll set to professional. Then I'll talk about the income period, as this may be a point of confusion for some users. So in expert, whenever you are entering income, expert will take the income amount that you're entering here and display it as an annual amount down below. When it comes to selecting the income period, ensure that you're selecting the income period that is tied to the income amount you have entered. So if you're entering a salary or annual income, select annual. If you're selecting biweekly, which is the common pay period, you will see that expert will take this $92,000 and multiply it by 26 to satisfy the biweekly selection. Okay, so this will be incorrect. So ensure that the correct selection is made. If there are any other incomes to declare, that can be entered here in this section. Down below, we have our assets. So if the applicant has any assets to declare, those can be entered in this section. So let's say they have a vehicle here. And maybe they have a savings account. Now I'll use an example of how you can use these asset entries as down payment. So for instance, if you're working on a purchase and they have RRSPs or savings and you want to use that towards the down payment of a purchase of a home, you can enter the amount you want to use for down payment and then simply select create down payment, and expert will create that record for me. And you'll see here that it is grayed out now because it is being used elsewhere. In order to edit this, you would have to delete this entry from the down payment section, which we'll see later on. In the asset section, we do have a placeholder for the property, as this once again is a refinance type deal, which will mean that the property itself would be an asset. And if you see down below in the liability section, we also have the mortgage on that property, as that would be the liability that is existing and that we're refinancing. As this is a test application, we do not have any credit bureau liabilities. In the case that you do have credit bureau liabilities and maybe there are some missing, maybe it's a newly reported liability like a credit card, you do have the ability to add liabilities manually. Here's the list of liability types you can enter. So from credit cards to loans to child support. So I will be entering a credit card. And when it comes to entering the balance on a credit card, Expert will take 3% of the balance and enter it as the payment. If for some reason the payment needs to be adjusted, you can press on OVR, which will allow you to override the payment and make a change. Okay. If the applicant were to pay off the liability, you can then make the appropriate selection from the payoff dropdown. So instead of setting the payment to 0, you can set it to something like prior to advance. And that would then negate that payment from the calculation. Okay, so you will put that back. I'll add an initial liability here. So add a student loan. All right, then as we continue, the deal starts to generate the information, and shortly enough, we'll have some proper GDS, TDS started to generate based on the information that is already entered. When it comes to property entry, especially on a refinance type deal, the very first property you should be entering should be the subject property. Any subsequent properties would be entered down below by selecting Add Property. So I'll go ahead and I'll enter my property. I'll enter the occupancy in a little bit. We do once again have address lookup, but in this case, we are refinancing the property that they live in. So I'll press on the clipboard here, and it's going to copy over the details of the current property address. Save me some time. I'll enter in my property value, original value, purchase date. Okay. And then the expenses of the property. And then I'll skip over some of these and I'll come back to that in a moment, and I'll enter in the mortgage currently on the property. All right, so if we go back to occupancy, we'll talk about some of the occupancies available in Expert. So we have owner-occupied, which is pretty straightforward. The applicant lives in a home. Owner-occupied and rental, the owner lives in a home and they may be renting a bedroom or a suite in the basement, something like that. We have rental, which would make the property a straight rental property. And then second home, which could be something like a cottage. So if you are entering anything that generates income, like owner-occupied and rental, you then have the ability to add rental calculation to the property. So let's say $2,300 comes in a month. And then expert down below will ask what happens with that income. So are we adding a percentage of that to the gross income, which would be pretty straightforward. So 80% added directly to the gross income. Or are we negating our expenses and then adding the leftover to our gross income? So the way that that would work, expert would take the 2,300 minus the 130 minus the 125 minus the 1236, and then 80% of the leftover would then go to our income. Okay, so I will set this to owner occupied, and we'll remove my rental information. And lastly, I'll enter some equity on the property, so what's been built up. Typically, that's the difference for the down payment on a refinance. All right, so I've done the entry on this page. I will simply scroll to the bottom and press OK. Expert is going to validate it for any missing information, which it should be. Okay, and here we have our validations. In Expert, there are two types of validation. So we have our cautions and our yields. Essentially, what we call them is hard stops and soft stops. So our cautions, the red ones, will prevent you from submitting a deal to a lender as it is missing information required for the purpose of underwriting. Then we have our warnings. So warnings will let you know that you have missed information, which may be important. So in this case, we don't have contact information for Liz. So we are getting the warning that there is no contact information. If you do have multiple validation errors, you can always press open a new window, which will give us a pop-up, and you can easily follow along to fix those errors. So all you have to do is press on the blue hyperlink. So take me to first-time home buyer, and it highlights it in yellow to ensure that I know where that is and I don't miss it. Next one is existing client, which should be nearby. We then have marital status. Okay, and like I said, the rest was contact information, so I'll leave that blank and I'll continue from here. And I'll do that by pressing OK. And I will validate again. I'm satisfied with this, and I'll press continue to application editor to move to the next screen. So now that we're on page 2, we have some flexibility with our applicant entries. So as I mentioned previously, if you're dealing with an applicant or applicants that are non-spousal to each other, you do have the ability to add other applicant pairs. So right here underneath your existing applicant, you would simply select add applicant, applicant pair, which would then create an entry for 2 new applicants. So anytime you add a new applicant pair, you have applicant 1 and applicant 2 again. Now, not to be confused with our entry, I will put here second applicant, and you will see now on the left-hand navigation, we have our folder for Liz, which is the primary, and we have our folder for second applicant, which is our secondary pair. When you have a secondary pair, there are additional things you can do. So for instance, I can change the type of applicant they are. So if this applicant is a cosigner, typically the applicant pairing that does not have the primary would be the cosigner. And down below we have the guarantor, so the person that guarantees the payments if required. If you are selecting guarantor on an application, that person's debt service ratios will not be included. To note that this is just something that you'll run into an expert and should not affect your submission to the lender. Some additional things you can do when you have multiple applicants on the deal. You can change who the primary applicant is. So if I set this back to applicant, I can then set my second applicant as the primary. Lastly, with multiple applicants, you do have the ability to hide applicants. So this will prevent me from deleting applicants if I don't want to send them to certain lenders. For instance, if I don't want to send a deal with second applicant, I can remove the check mark here. And when the lender receives the deal, they would just have Liz. Although on my deal, I would still have second and whoever the third party may be. Scroll to the top and I'll talk about more of these options here. So we have edit, which is pretty straightforward, which will allow you to edit the details of that applicant pairing. Next step, we have duplicates. Duplicates at a high level can be used to move applicants from one section to another. Versus with that, you can contact the support team. Lastly, we have delete. Delete will allow you to delete the applicant pairing from the application. A reminder that if you are deleting an applicant, that it cannot be retrieved and any bureau will be deleted. Down below, we have the details of our subject property. So most of it is already entered in as we are working on a refinance type deal, so it just copies it over. One of the mandatory fields is MLS listing, so I'll make sure to make that selection here so that it's not missed. Although there's no MLS listing number field, the MLS listing number can be entered in the notes of the lender if required. All right, so I'll enter some mock information about this property. All right, and we'll get to our expenses section. So in the expenses section, we do get the question often on these is if expert is calculating the expenses on the property twice. And the answer for that is no. Although it is presented on this screen as presented on the previous screen, it is a mirror of the previous screen. So removing the include in TDS calculation selection will completely remove this expense from the calculation. So within the subject property information, we have partnered with a couple providers to provide you home insurance quotes and appraisal providers. Clicking on the home insurance quote option allows you to share the applicant's information with Surex for them to search for the best home insurance quote. Ensure that you obtain appropriate consent prior to proceeding with this feature. Similarly, you have the option to request appraisal through Value Connect. Similarly, you have the ability to send the applicant's information to appraisal provider Value Connect for them to match the applicant with an appraisal provider. Continuing on, we have our down payment section where we have the existing down payments we have entered from the previous screen. As you see, we have our savings accounts and we have the equity on the property. If you are not planning to use the blank box provided to you, ensure that you make the selection to delete it. And we'll continue on here. Onto our mortgage information. It's going to force you to enter the purpose of this transaction. So we'll do refinance. We have our down payment section. So essentially, you can press the clipboard here to paste the down payment value. And it will calculate it and tell you that this is 18.72% of the property value, which means you can use this as a backwards calculator. So if you want to know 5% of the property value, you can always press 5 here. It's going to return you that value. Okay, so I will press the clipboard and first mortgage to complete the calculation, and we are requesting the refinancing of a first mortgage. All right. In the mortgage request details section, you can make a selection of the lender you'll be submitting the deal to. Some lenders may have products available when you make the lender selection, but we'll get back to that later on. In the mortgage classification section, you can classify the mortgage that is being worked on. The selection will have no impact on the deal itself. It will just dictate how it appears in the reports. We do also have the option for suspicious transaction, which will do the exact same thing as if you were to select a high-risk applicant. If the mortgage is to receive mortgage loan insurance, then ensure the insured checkbox is selected and then press recalculate. Okay, the premium rate will be displayed by default. To make this field editable, we would select premium rate override and make the appropriate edits. continue on, I'll enter in rate information. At this point, I've completed the entry for the application and the deal is ready to be submitted, although there may be steps to complete before the actual submission of the application. First things first, I'll go into Participants on the left-hand navigation bar. I'm going to look at some of the menus available there. The first option is Private Lender. Although there are over 300 lenders and over 200 private lenders, there may be some private lenders that are not connected to the platform. In this case, you do have the ability to create that private lender for tracking purposes. To do that, you will press Select. Ensure the search type is set to Add Edit Participants. Select Add Party. From this screen, you'll be forced to enter a hierarchy level, which essentially dictates who will have access to this party. So if you select User, only yourself has access to this private lender you're creating. If you select Firm, any user in the firm will have access to it as well. So I will select User, and I'm going to call this lender FC Lending. Then you can enter any contact information you want for the lender and press OK when completed. Okay, so it's going to give me a list of my lenders. I can press Cancel to get back to Participants, and later on I'll show you exactly how to use that lender we just created. Underneath that, we have Appraisers, Referral Source, and I'll talk about Solicitor as well. I'll group them in together as the steps to create those are the exact same. So you'll press Select to the right of the selection. You'll ensure the search type is set to Add Edit Participants. That will give you an Add Party option. Hierarchy level, once again, make your selection, whether it's for yourself, the group you're part of, the region or firm. So I'll press User just for myself. My contact name is June August, and she works at July Appraisals. Once again, I can enter in any contact information I wish to and press OK. And in order to assign July, I would then change my search type to Assign. You can then look for June here, press Search, and then press Select to the right of the name. You would see that it assigns that appraiser to the deal. Down below, we have deal assignments. So we have agent, which would be whoever owns the deal. Submission agent. So submission agent is not the person who owns the deal, but rather the person who technically submits the deal. Whenever submitting a deal with a submission agent, the lender will see this person's name. A submission agent can be used for things such as a volume bonus with the lender. Down below, we have associate, assistant, co-agent, and administrator. Making a selection in any of these dropdowns will allow you to give temporary access to any of these users. For instance, if I were to go on vacation and I need someone else to follow up on the deal for me, I can assign a co-agent to the deal. So let's assign agent AB. What this means is that this agent will have access to this deal until I remove them from this dropdown. Down below, we have an additional sharing option, which is co-brokering. The co-brokering now option allows me to share a deal outside of my firm. Okay, so this is the warning that tells you exactly about that. Pressing OK will get me to that screen. So when you co-broker in mortgage, it's going to ask you which one you're co-brokering. So you could have multiple mortgages here. I'll select the first mortgage. It's going to ask you to enter commissions for the mortgage you are co-brokering, although Expert does not hard code this information anywhere. Then we have our agent search criteria. Once you get to the agent search criteria section, you'll be prompted to enter a firm name, last name, and first name. We typically recommend that you do not enter a firm name as it's going to want what we have in our platform. In this case, enter the last name and then the first name if you feel like it is required. So I will send this deal to my friend Richard James. I'll press search here. It's going to come up with the results. So it found a Richard James at the Dark Side Mortgage. I will press view, and it's going to give me their contact information. Okay. From there, I can select Richard to confirm that this is where I will be sending a copy of this mortgage. Now, before you proceed, I will give fair warning. When completing a co-broker, it cannot be reversed. A co-broker essentially sends a copy of your application to the agent you have selected. Richard will now have a copy of their own application for Liz Taylor. That deal will be a dark side deal with a different deal number. Any changes that I make to my application, Richard will not see. Any changes that Richard makes to the application, I will not see. It's not recommended for the deal to be co-brokered back to the originating user, as all that does is create another copy of Liz Taylor. So I may have a deal 49903 now for Liz Taylor if Richard were to co-broker the deal back to me. So it is recommended that any change following the co-broker be manually imposed to the application. So I'll go ahead and I'll press proceed. And within a few seconds, Richard has a copy of this application. Now, the one thing about co-brokering an application, or mortgage I should say, is that it does remove it from my application and it locks my deal from editing. In order to make changes to my application again, I would scroll to the very bottom of the screen, select delete mortgage under the other existing mortgage section. Okay. And this will allow me to go back and re-enter the details of my request, which I will do quickly. One insured. Okay. And from here, we'll go directly to the lender submit screen. So under lender submit, you do have access to submitting deals to financial institution or private lenders. There is no limit to how many lenders you submit your deal to, and there is no limit to how often you submit your deal. So I can do an electronic submission to a specific lender. So let's say I send this deal to Coast Capital. We have a lender notes section, which I've expanded, and I can enter notes for the applicant to the lender. Okay. So from there, I can go ahead and submit my application. It's going to prompt me to confirm, and it's going to validate the deal again to ensure I'm not missing anything. All right, so I am missing dependents here. It's required rule. Okay, go back to lender submit. Select my lender once again, submitting to Coast. And now I will submit. Okay, so I just have warnings. So when you just have warnings, you can bypass the warning by selecting Submit to Lender. All right. From there, it will queue it for submission. For most lenders, they should receive the deal within about 10 seconds. Alternatively, if I want to send the deal to a private lender, we do have a list of electronic private lenders, but in the case, like I mentioned earlier, we're dealing with a lender that is not in the system. And we created one called FC Lending, I believe it was. So we'll select our submission method as manual. In the drop down, I'll search for FC Lending. I will use the exact same notes I used for the last lender. So simply I'll press recall last submit note. Okay. And this time our option will be print application. So I'll go ahead and press that. Okay. And bypass it by selecting print application is the action I'm trying to perform. And this time we get a printed version of the application, which is nice and clean. So we have our lender name here, FC Lending. So I can take this and then submit it to the lender via email or fax, if that's still a thing. We have our comments listed down below, the details of the applicant, the financing, and the property. Okay, so you can take all of that and submit it to the lender. Now, next step may be that you receive a commitment from that lender. So let's go to lender response. And we'll enter the commitment manually. So for sending to the deal to an external lender, the response will come externally as well, and you'd have to add it manually for tracking purposes. So we'll press add manual response here. We will do a response for FC Lending. They've approved the mortgage. And we'll press OK. Now we have our editing screen for the response details, which will allow us to correct any changes that appear on the commitment. So let's say the lender, they came back with a higher rate, 5.25 maybe, which means that the payment is slightly higher, so up it by $100. Technically, I think that would change the mortgage insurance as well, but I'll continue. So I'll press Save Changes here. Then I will accept this commitment from the lender. Press OK. It's going to give me a summary. And the acceptation of this commitment will then confirm those values and hard code them into the mortgage request. And it will hard code them as well into our forms. So we'll skip lender status and I'll go directly to fees. So in the fee screen, you'll have the ability to add any fees associated to the application. So let's say there's an appraisal that was completed, brokerage fee. And you do have the ability to add any custom fee as well at the bottom. So those fees would be appearing on select forms as well. So on the form screen, we do have a plethora of forms. These will be based on the agent that is on the deal and the province that they are assigned to work in. You do have the ability to print multiple forms together in a document package. Let's say I want the application, the summary, lender direction, the commitment, and the schedule. I can select those forms and then at the top select print documents. This will allow expert to generate a documents package so that I don't have to send my applicant multiple different attachments. I can then package select forms together and present them in a more clean, organized way. We do also have forms that are editable. So for instance, we have the Ontario Form 1. I can press edit here. Then on this screen, scroll down to the appropriate section and make my edits. Okay, and then we have a save option at the bottom. Another form, so we have the Ontario Disclosure form. For this one, through the print option, you will have your editing. So you can press on the plus here, that gives you your cost of borrowing section, and then here your conflict of interest to have that filler edited as required. Under the history section, you will see the history of actions performed in the application. In transaction history, you'll see field by field changes made in the application. Underneath that, we have internal notes. So internal notes is a bit different from the lender notes section. This is just for anyone that's in the firm that would have access to viewing these notes. So let's say there was a follow-up. Okay, you can enter that in and press OK, and it will timestamp an entry into the notes section. I'll skip over services and I'll go into commissions. So under commissions, you'll have the ability to view or enter the information regarding the commission of the application. If there are any other parties that are to be added to the deal as well, you do have the ability to add any party to the application. Next, we'll go into tasks. So I brought this up at the beginning. So you do have the ability to create tasks or reminders for yourself or other agents in your firm. So for instance, if I want to create a task to get the signed commitment looked at, I'm going to set this up for the 31st. And I'm going to assign this to myself. The priority is just a visual, so I can make it high. And any comments you may want to enter, you can enter here. And press save. That will generate a task. So as you see, we have the history of the task for this application, and any subsequent task for this application will appear here. Now for yourself, if you are using the task feature, on the top left here, if you when you log in as expert at the beginning of the day, let's say you're frequent user of tasks, you can go to task list and it will list all the tasks that are assigned to you either by yourself or a peer, and you can select update task to complete that task. Okay, so let's say I've completed that today. I can enter, actually let's say yesterday, I completed yesterday. Let's enter that in, press save, and Expert's going to mark that task as completed, and my task list should now be empty. Returning to my deal, we do have exchange documents down here. Now, it's not a functional tool in this environment that I'm in, but exchange documents will allow you to collect client documents and upload them to the exchange platform for storage. You will also have the ability to share those documents with select lenders if the lender isn't able to do so. Lastly, we'll go to the summary screen. Under the summary screen, you'll have a few options available to you. You can change the status of your application. For example, let's say my deal fell through and I don't want it to appear on select reports. I can select the status to canceled, select update status, and then press OK to confirm that I am canceling the application, which it does say will prevent me from future use. So as you see now on the left hand side, I've lost some of my editing options. If it was by error and you want to revert the status, you can change the status to ready to close. Select update status, which will allow for editing once again. Lastly, we have the copy application option. So this will allow you to copy your application in multiple ways. So if you want to copy your application one for one and have it exactly the same, you can simply select the OK option. There are additional options available to you, typically pertain to copying a purchase application into a refinance application. This first option will move the subject property address into each of your applicant's current address sections. We have the second selection, which would copy that same address into the property's own section. Lastly, you have the option to copy the current address into the previous address record. We've come to the end of the training session. Thank you for listening. Here's to empowering you so you can empower your clients.